Hello and welcome to NAMA number 28. You can watch
Wow.
us on YouTube, which is cross-posted to our website, to Facebook, and to Patreon. Oh, I got a little thing here that I need to delete from last
Old.
time.
And are we wanting to people to comment on
YouTube,
now?
yeah. So if you comment on YouTube, that's probably where we're going to be checking primarily now. Whereas before we were talking on, we were answering most of our questions on Patreon.
Now that we have it in two different places, it'll be easier for us to keep track.
Yeah, for sure. So let's just make sure everything's posted there. Is posted on Facebook that we're live?
I don't think so.
Let's go ahead and do that. Make sure everyone who wants to get in can get in. There are 8 people here already. Say hi. Let us know where you're from, where you're watching from, and that you can hear us and see us well. Make sure our sound's working. We've got quite a list of questions for you guys, and some news and updates that we're excited to talk about. If you haven't already taken part in our virtual group classes, those have been going really well. I'm really happy about them. We've done, I don't know.
Days?
Yeah, a few days of classes. I've done like 6, something like that. And I got to tell you, they feel great. They feel just like a real group class. People are asking great questions, getting to watch each other from the comfort of their own home. Getting a lot of great feedback on them. So I hope you'll join us for one of them. We're planning on doing some discounts for members of our website, and probably those discounts will extend to current patrons. So we're going to talk also about the shift to our new website and why we're doing that. That was the first question we got.
We'll probably wait a couple more minutes before we start answering that, right?
No, we can. It's 8 already, so
Okay.
We're going to start.
I haven't gotten it quite posted to Facebook yet.
Hi from New Mexico. And hi, Amira from Massachusetts. Awesome. So let's talk about this shift to our new website. So last couple of months, we've been working on transitioning all of our information from what on Patreon to a new website. And the reason we're doing that is there's multiple reasons. One reason is because the layout of Patreon isn't really designed for the type of content we create. It's designed for artists who produce either music or paintings, for you to observe some behind the scenes stuff and that kind of stuff. It's not designed for someone who's teaching online content. And so the sorting of how to find posts and how to look for posts is not great, and the messaging system is even worse. I can't search through my messages to find messages between me and other people, and I'm sure if you've used the messaging system for very long that it's and maybe because some of you are only patrons of me, you only have one message going in and out. But when I got several messages going in, there's a lot that just disappear. I don't know how to find them. So using our website primarily.
Well, we also found that our content that we use the directory to try to make it at least somewhat sorted so you could find it again. But even that wasn't always easy for people to find, and so people.
And it's hard to update, actually.
Yeah, people wouldn't know about all of those videos and stuff that were already there. They would only see the new stuff, and so we felt like 90% of the stuff that we posted wasn't able to be utilized unless you had been there when it was originally posted and watched it then. So
in fact, one of the things I thought about doing, which maybe we should just flip the camera on and show them, is showing them what our website looks. Because if you've been on our website already, it's a huge upgrade in terms of the usability of it, what it looks like, how things are organized. You can clearly see everything, find what you need. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things it's missing is a notification system. It's not going to notify you every time we post a new post, but I'm not really sure that everyone was getting all the notifications that Patreon was giving either, because it was an email system as well. It wasn't a notification
right
system.
So I think for now we'll probably send emails when we update things.
Well, we'll do a newsletter just like we always did,
right? And move toward, well, we're hoping that Kajabi moves towards a better sort of forum type setup. That a lot of their people want that. And that would probably include some.
In case you don't know, Kajabi is the new website platform we're using.
The background to our website.
Yeah. So that's one reason, is just to give you a better platform for searching and viewing things, that it's easier. The second reason is that we have complete control over our content. Patreon is a great platform and got us a lot of information and helped us on our way to doing online training. But they do occasionally censor people. And the way I've seen things going is even on Facebook and YouTube, dog training gets censored and gets banned from some of these websites. We're seeing on Facebook, breeder pages getting banned and dog sport videos starting to get flagged as inappropriate. PETA became a major shareholder in Facebook, and they're trying to push their agenda on a lot of these social media platforms. And so having it on our own website that we control what gets banned and what doesn't get banned is really great for us. And it means that all of our content won't be flagged for any reason because people are mad that they see a dog in a crate or something like that. Then the last reason is because I feel like the resources that we're providing are fairly high quality, and I think it was time for an upgrade in what we were charging for that, and making it accessible to making especially the video reviews more accessible to people, because a lot of people thought, well, I didn't make it into a $20 tier, so video analysis is out for me. And now we want people to know, no, you can still buy video analyses, and you can buy them on our website whenever you need them. And we're also providing those through Scentwork University. So if you haven't checked out Scentwork University, definitely check them out. They have a lot of great resources and a variety of price ranges, from the free challenges they've been posting on Facebook to group to class material to webinars to now they're offering single search video analysis, which is great. Do you want to have anything to add about Scentwork University or anything like that?
There are a lot of different instructors. It's sort of, Diana created it to be a place that people could have access to a lot of different instructors. So, there's a variety of topics. There's foundation stuff. There's things specific to various venues. And so you can really kind of figure out like who you mesh with, who you want to work with, get a variety of different content. I have, I think, 3 different courses currently up there. Working on 3 or 4 more right now. Michael's done several webinars for them. But it's a great place to just, like I said, get access to a whole bunch of different instructors. And even with the video review, there, I think currently, last time I checked, there were 4 different people you could request a video review from.
Yep.
And I think she's trying to add even more. And that was kind of inspired by the last webinar Michael did for her, where he was talking about the importance of having fresh eyes on your searches, especially if you're having trouble. Because, when we're there searching our dog, there's so much we can't see. And even going back and looking at our own videos, there's a lot of emotional content. There may be things that you haven't trained your eye to see. And so having ways to send those to an instructor.
And especially new instructors, like as great as we are, with our own personal students that we started from scratch and we've been working for years, there are some things that a new instructor just sees that we don't see. And that's why we bring in other instructors to come do workshops for us regularly. We bring Amy Haro, Roger Brandes, Leah Gangelhoff. We bring a bunch of instructors in. They come in, they look at our students, and they give us honest evaluations like, this person's doing this person's doing that, this person needs help in this arena. They see things that I don't necessarily see because I'm kind of like blind because I've been watching you for a year or longer. And so we're constantly recommending our students go and get new advice from new people whenever they can.
Yes, and while I absolutely agree with that, you should always be cautious with the advice that you solicit and the advice you take, which is why, going through somewhere like Scentwork University, where she's found instructors that she really believes in and things like that, and, see how things mesh into your training scheme. Right. But also, everyone has a different emphasis in how they train. Both of us tend to emphasize a lot of handling stuff. Other people tend to emphasize, other things. And so going to other instructors allows you to get feedback from their emphasis and what they've really trained their eye on, which is not going to be the same things that we have. I think that's a great service that she's offering.
Absolutely. So just the last little thing to put cap that, I really hope that you join us on our new website. I'm really excited to see where this goes. If you're on Patreon, I just want to clarify a few things. One, nothing is changing for you now. Okay? If you stay on Patreon, you're still going to receive the same rewards you've always received. The only difference might be that any new videos we create, will be posted to our website and not to Patreon. You'll still have access to all the videos we've already created, and you'll have access to your tier rewards. So if you're at $20, you're still going to receive one video analysis or video lesson per month. If you leave Patreon and move to our website, you will lose those tier rewards. So just keep that in mind, but you'll get access to all the new stuff we're posting there. Let's see, what else? We've closed down all of our spots on Patreon other than $5. So those who have those spots now get to keep them, but we're not accepting any new people in on those other levels, either above 5 or lower than 5. And so just because we're transitioning away, and so I hope that kind of makes sense to people, and I hope you guys understand why we're making this shift and are happy to pursue it with us.
And if you have any additional questions about that, feel free to either ask here or send us an email or something so we can clarify things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Are we ready to get into questions?
I think so. I haven't seen
Any comments?
questions. Nope.
Okay. Let's get right to it then. So the first question is one that I can't remember if we ended the last one with or not. So we're going to start with this one because it kind of fits almost a rant type feel.
Because I feel like we talked about it last month, but I could just be remembering seeing it. So
sure.
I don't know.
Okay, so the question was, when do you retire a dog? And I would like you guys to also, any of you with experience with retiring dogs or getting older dogs or dogs who were not temperamentally sound for competition, when do you retire a dog? First thing I would like to say is retiring a dog usually almost always means from competition.
Oh, I remember we did talk about this.
We did?
Yeah.
Okay, then we will just leave it to as a discussion for people on YouTube to keep discussing it, because I think it's an important discussion worth having. Actually, let's change this slightly. Instead of talking about retiring a dog, how do you know competing is for your dog? Which is a really important question. It's something I've been talking with a couple other trainers. Diana Santos of Scentwork University has been posing this question a lot recently. She has a couple great blogs about it too. There are a lot of people competing in nose work who have dogs who really would prefer not to compete. That they find the environment stressful, all the dogs, all the people, the stress on the handler. And there are dogs who thrive in the competition environment. They love going out to new places. They love the new challenge. They like being stressed, right? There are people who like being stressed, who go and compete. They're like me.
us.
Yeah, exactly.
And there was a little bit of a conversation on this topic on our Facebook group a few weeks or a couple months ago.
Oh.
I think Tina started it with the question about when you know if it's time to stop competing or something like that. And
Yes.
so there were very divergent opinions on that.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it's a question on a lot of people's minds, especially as their nosework dogs are aging.
Well, and also
that changes the picture, or they're finally starting to realize the dog they've been competing with for however long maybe doesn't get as much out of it as they used to or thought that they did.
Keeping in mind that a lot of dogs that come into nose work because they have behavior problems, right? Which is kind of unique from other dog sports. I mean, there's the occasional person who comes does agility because their dog has aggression issues or fear issues. It's rare. Most people don't do agility.
And you're much less likely to compete because of the potential dangers for your people and your dogs and things like that.
I should say that it's not that I think that agility isn't helpful for those things. I think it is. I think that people should do dog sports with dogs who have issues. I just think competition is not necessarily a part of dog sports. So, anyways, I definitely think that you should take regular breaks from competition to reassess whether you and your dog are having fun. And I'm also throwing that question out to you guys to discuss in the comments. How do you judge? If you're an instructor, when do you have the talk with your students about not competing or taking a break from competition? And how do you broach that subject with them? I tend to be fairly blunt and just say, your dog isn't right for competitions. Come to our fun days, come to our classes, have a good time with them. But I really would recommend that you don't compete. And if they keep competing with a dog that I think is unsound, I will actually ask them to stop coming to classes because I don't want them going out and, hurting themselves or others under my tutelage in a way. So I've never had to do that, fortunately, but I would.
Yeah. We actually retired Ghost, Michael's border collie, She has an NW2, a hard one NW2. It took her a
Yes.
few tries. But we finally decided that as much as she absolutely loves nose work, she just doesn't thrive in a competition environment. She gets stressed by the people and just isn't kind of her happy, bouncy, usual self. And that was creating a lot of false alerts and things that were probably like a bid to get out of the search area or something like that. Or she just doesn't really understand the heightened stress of the handler. I think that's probably a big part of it too, because she's a fairly sensitive dog. And so even though like I would love to, she's not my dog, but I have run her in trial once. I would love to run her in an NW3 because I love NW3s, and especially with the new rules, it would be really fun. And she's the only dog we have right now who's eligible for NW3.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's worth it. You know, with the time and the money and her not loving it, why bother? Whereas I'm gonna, I make much more of an effort with my other dogs to trial because
And she still has a blast playing with nose work at home.
oh yeah, she does. I really believe that my other dogs love trialing because they kick it up another notch when we're in a competition search. Showing off and being flashy and fast, and they aren't coming in.
And that's another really useful distinction was what she's talking about is the stressing up versus stressing down, and knowing what kind of dog you have. And the way you would know is if you go to your first couple trials, and the dog's a maniac, and even if they don't perform well, but they're running around and jumping on things and doing everything, and a lot of people get really frustrated. How do I need to slow my dog down. I need to do this and this. If you have that dog, you're probably good to go. Keep competing, But if you have a dog who stresses down, if they get depressed or sunken or worried, that's a good example of a dog who should focus on training before you go back and compete until that issue is resolved.
Yeah, and there are different ways. Like sometimes it's just not the environment for that dog. Sometimes it's finding ways to be less stressed as the handler, because the dog is mostly responding to you as the handler. And then if you get that worked out, then maybe the dog would be fine. But you have to keep being willing to assess if it's right or not.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts about that?
Okay, let's go on to the next question, I think. This is a quick one. Are you still of the opinion that AKC's handler discrimination is problematic for traditional nosework searching?
Is that a quick one?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because our opinion hasn't changed as far as I know. And I just, lastly, I want to give the same disclaimer I usually get when I answer this question, which is that I have no problem with handler scent discrimination training. I have a problem with the fact that they use ORT boxes as their first level when that's exactly what we use for nose work. I don't want the dog being confused with how many problems dogs already have on container searching. I don't want a dog being confused about what they should be doing when they see boxes, especially at the beginning. If you have an NW3 elite dog, probably not a problem. But it's the beginning when a lot of dogs are starting at the beginning doing both. I do think it's hard. On the one hand, we're teaching the dog ignore handler scent. On the other hand, we're teaching the dog to alert on it,
Mm-hmm.
And that can be somewhat confusing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that if you make the choice to do both, think about ways that you can make the training clearer to the dog, have different context cues, have a different change of equipment, have a different search command, proof it so the dog understands the differences. I would do it with either of my current nosework dogs because they've been doing nosework for ages. I have played with it with at least one, if not both of them. But I know that their nosework foundation is very solid. And that I could change things enough to make things clearer for them. But it's not important enough to me to mess with what I have in nosework to get that title. So I'm not going to compete in that because it's not worth the training time and the risk to me. But
I think it depends on how you approach it too. Like a lot of people, like I could go in and just do it, like I do with Barn Hunt. I just take my dog in, I tell them search, they probably find it, I say alert, and we're done. We've cleared through the beginning stages of handler scent discrimination in 2 or 3 trials. But the way a lot of people compete is 1 week before the trial, they're doing hundreds of box drills drilling it with their dog, and that's where you ruin your dog, is all the drills you do at home. It's not the one trial, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just fly through it and then move it to the advanced levels where they're hiding your scent, fine, that's fine. um, I'm okay with that. I mean, my dog, Catfish, he finds my scent, no problem. I can scent his toy and hide it, and he finds the toy scent paired with my scent, and I'm not worried about that influencing his nose work.
No, I
But
think it's just being clear in your context and then being aware that if you're doing a container search for the container trial and then you're doing a handler discrimination search, are you making it clear enough to your dog to be fair to them? And I do think there are ways of doing that, but like I'm not going to teach both in my nose work class. If people want to do handler discrimination with me, I will do it as a separate time and event for them. But I don't think mixing it is
sure.
worthwhile.
Okay, next question. How often should residual odor be trained? What's the best way to train residual odor? I get confused as to how we train our dogs to different strengths of odor versus residual. Isn't residual just a low strength of odor? So that's a very good question. It's one we get a lot. It's one that I really should prepare a video for our website. We should add that to the list of videos we have on the agenda. So how often should it be trained? We'll just go down the list. I think that you should train it very regularly, as in it should be one of the things that probably you do almost every time. And
I don't know how you would even get away from
exactly
doing it every
because
time.
we're training a lot in similar locations. When we go somewhere new, that's great. I don't go out of my way to set residual. It just happens to be that I train in the barn regularly. There's residual there, and the dogs are getting used to it. And I don't make sure to set the hide always in the same place in the room. It's always somewhere new. So the dog naturally works through residual.
And I think most group classes are that way, that you have a regular area that you train. And so you're going to, through the rounds of the class, have quite a bit of residual. And then, if I'm doing like a series of exterior searches, maybe not. But it's intentionally done with great regularity.
Yeah.
And even between classes, like if I have 2 back-to-back classes, I'm not going to try to make my hides match the previous class
or
so that
scrubbing down residual
less
spots.
residual. I don't even think or care about it.
So probably a better way of phrasing this question would be, when should you not train residual odor? And so there are a couple things. One thing I would recommend not doing residual on is when you're introducing the dog to odor. You want to keep that somewhat pristine where the dog, so that there's less confusion. When I'm imprinting odor on the dog, I want things to be very clear. Odor, yeah. Nothing, no. Okay. And then pretty quickly I start seeing, there's a gradient. There's a little bit of odor particle here, but you go over here and you find it. Also, with the average dog, probably doesn't make that big of a difference, but every now and then you have a dog who does get confused. It's fairly rare, but it does happen. Another time you shouldn't mess around with residual odor is when you're setting up a competition. So when we're setting up game days or things like that, we do go out of our way to make sure that we don't reuse areas on the same day, because the heightened stress of competing and doing blind searches will augment the problem. If your dog shows interest and someone calls a false alert, they get frustrated. Even if we say, don't worry, I'm not going to score that against you because it's residual, people psychologically get frazzled. And unless that's the goal of what I'm doing, I don't want to set that up.
Right. And it increases the handler's mistrust in their dog.
Yeah.
Even though, probably really shouldn't.
Yes, that's correct. Are there any other times where I would recommend not doing residual odor? Anytime there's heightened stress, I would say.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We both taught at multiple nosework camps, and you see throughout the week. Well, for one thing, there are a bunch of groups of dogs. So there's usually about 12 instructors, and any given working time, they all have their own group. So there's a lot of groups of dogs there, and they're all doing different exercises, and having to reuse the same spaces throughout the day. And so you get to like day 3, and dogs are just hitting on stuff everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the stress and also fatigue of camp that creates that. I don't think these dogs would be hitting on residual like this.
Some of them would, because a lot of people train for Speenley.
Right. But I think there are dogs there that wouldn't normally that start to.
Mm-hmm.
And the handlers are stressed and tired.
Yes.
And it becomes a bit of a mess. And so the instructors end up spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to minimize residual odor issues. But even in doing that, it's very hard. Oh, and I think an additional issue, at camp is that you also have a whole bunch of dogs finding these odors and then leaving a lot of nose prints, slobber, treat crumbs, all of these things that are adding to the dog's insistence that they should get paid as well.
Yeah.
But at camp, there's really nothing you can do about it. You
Yeah.
can try as hard as you want. You can't set all the same hides for every class, different groups, different levels, and all those
No.
things. But that's so not a time to not, but it's just interesting how it affects them.
I definitely think, like, from me as a camp participant, if I were going as a student, this is what I would do. One is I would make sure that my dog gets as much rest as possible. So they have that self-serve, the Snurf, the self-serve sniffer. I would not do that with my working dog. I would only do that with a dog who was coming along for the ride. So if I brought 2 dogs, but I was only working one, the non-working dog would get to do that every now and then as a way to exercise. But my main working dog, I want to focus on his sessions. The second thing is, I'm not going to be.
People overwork their
I do,
dogs.
and I also think they overfeed their dogs. So you make sure that one, people are worried because you're giving your dog a lot of food during camps, a lot of food, and a lot of times they go through all these sessions, they give the dog a ton of food, and they get back to their room and they feed them their meal. It's like no. They should be getting no meal. I wouldn't feed my dog any meal. They would be eating their meal throughout the working sessions. And then 2, I think they start to ration their treats because, like, I'm giving my dog a lot of treats. I'm going to give them less treats. And now that changes the dog psychologically, either diminishes their drive or makes them heightened, like trying to figure out what do I need to do to get that better treat like you normally do. And so either way, that's a result we don't want. So make sure you're paying the same, but just feeding less overall. Don't feed the dog outside of the sessions, in other words.
Mm-hmm. And I would, especially if I was running a dog on the last day of camp, I would probably not do any blind searches the last day of camp.
Yeah.
If I did do them earlier in the week, which I probably would, since you're getting a chance to work
Don't
with
forget,
some
you
really
can
good
always
instructors.
opt out. Yeah.
Yeah, but I wouldn't on the last day because you've got the extra fatigue, the extra stress. And so I wouldn't want to be wondering if I should pay my dog or not. I wouldn't want that confusing, conflicted body language and communication. And so I would just make sure I knew where every hide was before I ran a search and was able to give the response to my dog that I wanted in a timely manner of either ignoring hitting on residual or paying hitting on odor.
Yeah. So now the next thing is, what's the best way to train residual? And that's really simple. Set a hide, let it cook for a moment. It's up to you how long. Move the hide before you run it. That's if you need to specifically train it as a drill. Otherwise, just set 2 or 3 searches in the same area. So set a search, run it, set another, move the hides, run it again, move the hides, run it again. And the most important thing is, don't help your dog. If they hit on or notice a residual, just wait. Just let them learn to leave it on their own. Don't give them the cue that leave it. If you're wrong, that's not it. Then the dog starts looking to you for, like, is this right or wrong this time? Mm-hmm. Oh, it's residual? Okay, I move on. So then we're actually preserving that alert where the dog just looks at me to tell them whether they're right or wrong. It's like, no, it's your job to tell me whether it's residual or not my job.
Yeah, and if you've seen our pattern drills, which probably most of you have, where we're setting a hide, running it, moving it, running it, moving it. And so we're moving it, like sometimes we'll do a bunch of hides in like this much space.
Yeah.
That actively trains against residual. But without that being the focus. And because I wouldn't want to do it usually really focusing on residual because then you're just bringing more attention to it. But if it's just a byproduct of how you're setting hides, I think the dogs get over it a lot faster, but I wouldn't respond to them because so many people, even if they're not pulling the dog off, they're, oh, you already found that.
Or they're pacing, kind of moving their feet, doing things like that.
It just needs to be like there was nothing there. No response to the dog whatsoever. Not a no, not a yes, not a feeling bad that you're not paying them. I think it's really important to not be conflicted about it and not to give the dog conflicting information. And I think, so the way I mentally think about what the dog is finding is that they're finding the odor vessel that is emanating scent. Mm-hmm. And having that, whether it makes a difference to the dog or not, having that as the picture in my head seems to make things clearer to the dog. I mean, whether it makes a difference to the dog, but whether or not that's actually on a molecular level what's happening, who knows? But when I have that picture, my dogs and my students' dogs seem to have much less issue with other things, and it makes me not have to feel bad about residual pooling, anything where I might feel conflicted about paying or not, because that is not the source that is emanating the odor.
Yeah. I was going to add something about that, and then I read comments on Patreon, and I got distracted. The dang it, it's gone. I don't know. That's so sad. So we'll move on to the theoretical question of, is residual just a low strength of odor? And I think yes, it is.
Kind of, maybe.
And that, I think, for me, the way I think of it is there's a strength of odor that below this doesn't pay. And I don't see it differently. And just like she said, it's the source of the odor that you're looking for. Or the vessel of the odor, I think is the way you put it.
I said the scent vessel that the odor is emanating from.
It's the same. It's like if a rat lays down, like barn hunt, right? Lays down in some bedding. There is residual oils from the rat's skin. There's fur. There's poop, and there's all sorts of other things there. That's real scent. And the dog is. I want the dog. You're not looking for rat scent. You're looking for a rat. You're not looking for odor. You're looking for the scent vessel. Okay. And
don't take that too literally to mean like they're looking for the tin, but they're looking for, the whole thing, the hide that was hidden. And I just as an aside make a point to use a variety of scent vessels so that my dog can find, cute scented Q-tips in whatever they happen to be in. But I think that is the easiest way of saying it.
A spider.
Get rid of it.
I'm sorry. I like teasing my. Oh, it's gone.
Where'd you go?
I don't know. You ran away. There was a spider. Sorry about that. We survived.
No.
We're okay.
No, we didn't.
Okay. Natalie thinks she's not going to survive. Okay. Well, I think that's enough for residual. If that thought comes back to me, I'll mention it. Yep. But so next, why are containers the lowest passed element, and how can we make our dogs rock solid at it? I have now failed 2 different trials because of containers, and it is because of mixed box or buckets. Where should I order buckets from to simulate NACSW trials?
And just if you're watching, the person who asked this question, to clarify what you mean by buckets, do you mean the paint cans with the lid on top, or do you mean something else?
Plastic Tupperware bucket type thing?
Yeah, just to get an idea of what exactly it was that you struggled with.
Yeah. So why containers are the lowest passed element? I have a lot of trainers will give you different beliefs about why that is. Here's my take on it. There are 2 reasons. One is because the handler, it provokes the handler fixating on boxes. They they look at them, and that causes the dog to false alert. So that also goes to say why, in what way are people failing containers? I don't think people are failing containers because they're missing odor. That's not. I think it's because they're falsing. Okay, at least that's what I've noticed COing trials. That they might false before they get to an odor, and so they feel like they missed the odor, or they might pass over the odor and then false somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But that's not the same problem. I don't think it's because odor is obscured in the box and the dog's missing it. I think it's because handler provoked falses happen all over the place. And that's, again, because of fixation.
Right. Part of why they moved from luggage, though, I think is because that actually can be genuinely difficult in a way that metal and plastic and cardboard isn't, or at least more consistent in it, or the luggage is less consistent because you don't necessarily know what materials it's made of and how the odor is going to work out of it. Yeah. But I think it's not really a search. In a lot of ways, it's, does this container have odor? Yes or no? Does this container have odor? Yes or no? And that is not particularly interesting, I don't think, for a lot of dogs. For some it is, and you pay them well enough and it's fine. But a lot of people, they like yank the dog back to the containers over and over again, and the dog's like, ugh, come on. Or they're trying to get to the odor container, but the leash is just a little bit too tight and they can't get there, so they communicate on the closest one they can get to, and then you get a false, because it's so common to get a false, like on the way to odor. Or the dog has become confused about how odor works in containers and what they're looking for, because you're doing too many inaccessible container hides. And so they've forgotten in some ways that there is an odor in the box, and that is what they're looking for. So they're just looking for, odor that's pooling on top of boxes with slobber, treats, whatever, and so they're a little less accurate because they aren't really tightened up on exactly what it is they're looking for.
That's getting into the second reason. But before we go there, I do want to mention, so handler produced faults, but also I think it's the element that the dog's patterned the strongest in, and that produces problems too. Is that dogs have the strongest opinions about that about where odor is likely to be or not likely to be, and so the handler fixates, the dog fixates.
Yes, I had an elite trial where we had a container search that was broken into 3 sections, and so once you finished this section and moved on, you couldn't go back. And the first section was like plastic containers, a variety of kinds, and the last section was like metal, and the middle section was all cardboard and plastic and metal, like kind of all mixed together, if I remember it correctly. And anyway, the first container we hit in the middle section is an ORT box, and my dog just like collapses on it and looks at me. And I call her, and I, immediately realized that I was wrong, but it was her going, "Oh my gosh, I know what ORT boxes are for," and just slamming it. She hadn't even sniffed it. There, and I should have not been so amped up that I went ahead and called it, but handler fixate, dog fixate, and part of that. So to me, that reiterated 1, well, I need to chill out. 2, I shouldn't have just done the warm-up boxes with her because I added to the pattern that she already has of being overly fixated on ORT boxes, and then it's something I need to proof in training and really work on.
Yeah. So, and what's one thing I would say is a lot of times when we're doing pattern lessons and container searches, the pattern we're teaching the dogs is that it's not always in containers. So we got all these containers out there, and the hide is on a wall, on a bush, on the grass, just anywhere other than a container. That's an important patterning lesson. So yeah, that's important. Now,
and when I handle a container search, I try to handle it just like an area search. Not you have to work container, but go.
Well, there's a time and place for that if there's a time pressure or things like that.
Sure.
And if you haven't overly patterned containers, then you can do more of that.
And depending on the kind of container and all manner of things. So yes, there are, and I have done that where I just have my dog go to container. But if my dog catches odor and wants to work that to a wall and then sweep back to the container, that is what the odor is doing and what I want to allow them to do. And I think you get more accuracy when you allow the dog to work the odor picture the way that makes sense to them instead of using our human brain and eyes and say, that's a container. The odor should be very obvious to them and not allow them to work the odor problem for themselves.
Yeah. And so the second class of reasons why I think containers are hard is because we treat the container search with a higher level of reverence than we do other searches. So this whole thing about residual odor and contamination, we hold containers a bar above that, where we go, make sure to keep your odor boxes separate from your non-odor boxes. Whereas with interiors or exteriors, we move the hide from object to object, not worrying about the residual as much.
Some people do.
Some people have objects that they place out for odor, and whenever they put odor on an object, like let's say put it on a broom, they'll remove that from the room for the next search. But most people don't. Most people, and like with vehicle searches, what are you going to replace the car every search? Change the tire out when you put a hide in a wheel well? Most people don't hold other searches to the same level of standard. So what happens? The dog learns that not every pocket, a little bit of odor means that I get paid.
Right, because they start to think that any odor they catch on a container must mean it's the odor container.
And so even if it's blowing 10 boxes that way and it's hitting this box here, I'm going to alert on it.
So they're just not being as precise and careful as they could be because they think they found a shortcut that will work for them, which is our fault. If we've created a shortcut, then they're going to utilize it. And so we have to work to not accidentally create shortcuts that we didn't mean. Do you have more to say on that aspect?
No, I'm just waiting to get to follow-up questions on this.
Okay, because we had some follow-up comments response to our question.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I was just going to say also in NW3, well, NW2 and NW3, you have either the knowledge in NW2 that you have food and or toy distractions. No, food and toy distractions. And then in NW3, you have the potential of food and or toy distractions. And just the knowledge that that's a possibility makes handlers do weird things, second guess their dog, assume anything their dog is responding to is a distraction, and all kinds of things that don't have anything to do with odor. But it adds a lot of stress to the search.
Why don't you read the follow-up comments and questions on this question?
She said the paint cans, the sealed one, with the regular lid on top.
We get those from Lowe's or Home Depot or anything like that. You can find them fairly easily.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to find special ones that they use in NCSW trials. It's just
I mean, they're just getting them from
yeah,
hardware stores.
or the host is getting them. You know, the NACSW doesn't provide those, so the host gets them from wherever they get them. So the ultimate question is, or the ultimate solution is, you go to a trial and you find difficult containers. Find the host and ask them where they got them. Or ask them if they're getting rid of them, because a lot of hosts get rid of those containers after trial because they can't use them again for another trial.
And make a point just in general in your container searching of using a great variety of containers, different kinds of seams, different kinds of materials. The more your dog knows how to look for the seam on any given kind of container, the more accurate they'll be. And also be open to what the dog thinks is the best seam on that container. One thing I've noticed with those closed paint cans is that, yeah, we punch holes in the top of it, but the dogs will often want to go to the actual rim of the lid because the odor is coming out there too. And so just be open to how your dog wants to search and communicate.
You want to read the next follow-up question or comment?
Oh, and Brenda has seen a lot of plastic tubs with lids lately.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and the other thing is, Allison, I think that's Allison, asked or mentioned that her pup missed the odor in 2 different trials. So we're listing, you may have a unique problem on containers that isn't covered why most people fail containers. So we were trying to give the main reason why it's the number 1 failed search. I definitely fell into that big group of people who had falsing problems in containers.
Mm-hmm.
But our dogs were also super sensitive to odor, and they didn't miss odor if they got to the odor, they pretty much alerted on it. But if they that's typically where you fall on the spectrum, is either your dog's super sensitive and they alert on odor and everything, or they're not super sensitive to odor and they miss everything.
And then the question also becomes, so did you miss odor having given your dog ample access to the odor? Did you call finish too early without giving them access? Was the odor only coming out one side of the container and you searched the other side of the container but not that side? Yeah. There are a lot of different things that could be happening. And we had a follow-up comment of, I think they are airtight. My seeing dogs work them, I would say they are not airtight.
Yeah, so if it's a question of you're worried about the odor escaping them, then look at the results. How many dogs passed? If there's no odor escaping the box, then you should basically have an almost 0 pass rate. That doesn't mean the random dog might not false alert on it, which it is a false alert if they're alerting on an odor on a box that has odor in it, but the odor's not escaping, it's false. But if you're having a large swath of dogs, even if it's challenging, if a large proportion of dogs are alerting on that box, then the odor's escaping.
And they do have rules and regulations on the number of holes that have to be in these sorts of containers. Sure. So there were certainly holes in them. And, when you buy them for yourself, take the time to punch some holes in them.
Sure.
They're more airtight than a cardboard box. But
and the odor escapes from them differently.
Yes,
for
very
sure.
differently.
Yeah.
And so the dogs do need exposure, like I just had said before, to these different sorts of containers to understand how odor escapes out of them.
And that's what. So the next half of that question was, how do you make sure that your dogs are rock solid in containers? So there's a couple things. One is, don't think in terms of elements so much. So make sure your dog's rock solid at odor in any environment. And then make sure your dog is also rock solid at odor that is concealed in different ways. So, because that's all we've done is put in a box where it's concealed slightly. And so I can set that up without necessarily using containers. I can put odor underneath a blanket on the couch, and that's concealed now. And can your dog find that? Can your dog find it when I conceal it in a drawer, right? And this and that. And making sure that you always allow your dog full access to the source once they found it, that they finish sourcing it, they get paid at all of that good stuff. If you do that, you could actually never practice a container with your dog ever. Don't forget the tin is also a container, right? But so you've never trained container searches, you could still pass them just fine. In fact, I've sent dogs into their ORTs and they've passed and they've never done a container search. But that said, it's because they were solid on odor and they were solid on the idea of that odor could be obscured behind things, and they always drove to the source.
Yeah, and they're checking, if they catch odor, they're going to go check deeper into things as opposed to like expecting it to just be simple.
Yep. Okay, shall we?
Yes.
So what do you think of throwing a tin out in the backyard and letting the dog go find it off leash? you should watch our hunt drive lesson on our website. That is literally one of our basic drills of
Like
nose
our
work.
favorite thing to do.
Yeah, we throw odor out at the park or anywhere, and whether it's off leash or on leash, that's not the important part. The important part is that the dog sees you throw it out there, gets excited, you break their vision for a moment, so they've lost exactly where it was, and you send them out to hunt. They go running around.
Yeah, in
tearing
fact,
around
I
looking
just
for
did
it.
this again on Saturday with my hunt drive class, and on my drive building class, and on Tuesday, last Tuesday as well with my drive building class. I really I love it. And when I don't feel like, if I'm walking around a search area and I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm just stuck in my own patterns of where I set hides, like everything looks the same, everything is a chair hide or whatever, then I'll just throw one to just break myself out of overthinking where I'm setting odor.
Yeah.
Because the dogs are going to pick up on those patterns too.
Yeah, there's a very good chance that this is how I'm going to introduce my pointer to odor. Is I'm just going to take that odor the first time he's ever seen it and just toss it out and let him go find it and probably retrieve it. I experiment with all my dogs, in case you don't know, and for your benefit, so you can see what not to do or what to do. So I'm going to be experimenting with teaching him odor through retrieval, because retrieval is a strong part of who he is as a dog. And so I thought it's great behavior for him. I'm interested to see how that develops into a nose work dog and see what happens. So, do you make this odor super strong when we're throwing it? No, just use the same regular odor that we've always used. You can make it strong, but you don't need to make this drill work. Depends on how good's your arm. Are you using a chuck it to launch it a mile away? Then you might want to use
if you've got any kind of wind, I would expect it to be moving pretty quickly.
Yeah, and if your dog sees you throw it, then they will go to the general area and then begin the area search. They won't start area searching from your feet.
Yeah, one thing I like when throwing hides is finding places where the ground is a bit cluttered, whether that's grass, if you're fortunate enough to have grass, or just stuff that I've set out in a search area. It could be a bunch of boxes. It could be a variety of things. But so my dog is to see it flying through the air, and sometimes they make a point of skidding it across the ground, because that's a motion that is more exciting to them. But then when it lands, it's obscured, and so they can't just remain visually connected to it. They have to hunt. But yeah, I don't use any different odor than I do for anything else.
Agreed. Something just for those of you who are new to it, we don't do this because we have pretty good visual memories, and we only rarely lose an odor tin. Did you ever find that odor tin you were throwing in that yard a year ago?
I know where it is, but I haven't gotten
so
it.
It's very common to lose an odor tin when you're doing drills like this.
But I only lost it because I threw it outside of an area I can get to.
Yeah. So anyways, what I'm saying is, if you buy some orange surveyor's tape and attach it to your tin, when you throw it out there, you'll be able to see bright orange strip to where your odor is. And the dog won't see that. That's part of the reason you use orange for hunting, and why they use orange flags for tracking and things like that, is that orange with the red-green colorblind stuff, it's just invisible to the dog in the grass. So they won't see that. They may scent that orange surveyor tape, so there's that. But it's trading, being able to find your odor again versus giving your dog a small clue. I'm not worried about the clue, honestly.
Right. Or like when it was last winter, not this one that just ended, we had a big snow, couple feet, 2.5 feet maybe, and Michael had thrown a hide out into the snow, and Lumi was just not having it that day and didn't find it. And so when I got back from a trip, I just brought out a different dog, and she went and located it for us. So if you have access, if one dog doesn't find it, if you have access to another dog, give them a chance to find it.
That's true. Okay, so next.
Or come out the next day and find it. Then you have an even different, aged odor problem.
Yeah.
I also buy, to keep adding to it, I really like buying big red tins, so that helps too.
Yeah. So how often should we train blank searches? Blank elements is what she says here. Blank searches. I am a big believer that you can't really do it too much. That you need to remember that your dog is doing blank searches every time they're just wandering around a park and you haven't set odor out. They're doing a blank search. I basically do a blank search just about every time I take my dog out to search. They do at least one. And whether it's a pass of the environment we're going to work in just ahead of time. I mean, think of it this way. How often have you found out that your dog searches an area better after you've given a chance to walk around it and acclimate? What's the difference between that and letting them do a blank search pass? It's the same thing. We just feel differently about it. That's the only difference, if there's a difference.
Right, but on the other hand, you wouldn't want to do that every time because then your dog may not be able to do an efficient search when you go to competition and can't access the area ahead of time.
Yeah, maybe. Or I see it as a way of making my dog more efficient at trials. I remember I was at a trial once and I just had my dog blank search all the way to the trial. It was actually a special trial because they didn't have enough volunteers. So the exterior, instead of leaving you with a gate steward, they said, stay in this room until someone gets you. And so we were in this classroom and we just did a blank pass of the whole room. And they go up to the door, say, okay, you're up. This is your start line. It was right outside that room. And so I sent her out and she nailed it. And I think blank searching at a trial before your run, as long as you don't wear your dog out, is better than doing warm-up boxes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But that's a little bit different than what I was saying, where if you build the pattern of we're always going to do a blank search first.
Right, so don't pay
then a real
attention.
search.
Kind of
Right.
thing. Yeah.
I want my dog to have enough balance of various things that they see that they always have the expectation that there is odor. And so they're always going to search to the, extent of their abilities.
Yeah.
So I want to throw it in regularly, but in ways that are a little bit random so that my dog isn't anticipating anything.
Yeah, another version that I do regularly with my dog is, so let's say I have a 3 hide search somewhere. Dog goes, finds a hide. I reward him. I pick up the hide. Dog finds another hide. I reward him. Pick up the hide. Dog finds the last one. I reward him. I pick up the hide. The dog keeps searching. And I just don't stop them from searching. And a lot of people go, wow, good. We found 3 in like 2 minutes and you put the dog away. I just keep going. Keep hunting, keep hunting, keep hunting. And I'm looking at my watch. Okay, we've searched for 2 minutes now with no odor. Is my dog diminishing drive? I'm just observing this stuff. Is my dog returning to the spots where odor was?
This is very, very important for NW3 and elite prep as well. To not have the dog think that you always know how many hides there are.
And keep in mind, I got odor in my pocket. So if something goes wrong, I can pull one out and drop it somewhere in the search and let the dog find it.
And that's another way I love doing blank searches. A few years ago, I think I've talked about this recently in NAMA, but we were having a class at our student's house and we could use like basically her whole house except for like one bedroom that had her dogs in it or something. So, 2 bedrooms, a living room, a bathroom, a kitchen, some hallways, a laundry room. And so Michael decided for the class that day, we were going to have like 8 minutes apiece or something to search this whole house. And I was running Hazel in it. And so we had like a couple of hides on us. And we could decide, whether we wanted to spend a minute of blank searching or 4 minutes of blank searching or whatever, when we wanted to start setting hides. And then we would just set it sort of surreptitiously while our dog was running into the next space or something. And I really enjoyed that for kind of stretching out my dog's stamina and ability to do blank without giving up. That they always have that expectation. If I work a little bit harder, maybe there's something here. And then it's just up to me as the handler to determine when to call finish.
I think that covers that. Yep. How often a week should we train nose work? Good question.
Probably a lot of people training a lot more now.
Yeah. How many of you are training a lot more than you were a couple weeks ago? I think how much. There's 2 questions there. How much do you need to, and how much should you? So when I start my dogs on nose work for the first time, we got dogs here. We got a new puppy. They're pretty much doing it 4 to 7 times a week. So maybe every day, maybe every other day, something like that. Until we get to a certain point where then they switch over to kind of like a maintenance. And when we switch them over to maintenance, it's usually sometime after the dog is ORT ready. So it's anywhere between 3 to 6 months of that.
And that can
with Icy,
on your...
it was what, like 2 months before we switched her to maintenance kind of thing.
Well, with her, I was, and it's always different. None of my dogs have had regular classes since like Hazel was young, because it being trainers and being busy and all these things, and not necessarily taking the time for it. But so like with Icy, I started out. We were teaching in like 4 different locations a week or something like that. So I would take her to every location. And sometimes she would get a couple searches there. Sometimes she was just there for the ride. But we probably did that for 2-3 months. And then maybe brought that down to maybe 2 locations a week instead of 4 or something like that.
Yeah. And so most of the time, my maintenance,
on the dog too.
Yeah. Like my maintenance with Lumi is once or twice a month. My maintenance right now with Catfish is once a week, once every other week. is when he's doing nose work training. Now, that's partially because we do a lot of other dog sports. So they're doing every day, they're doing nose work. They might be doing agility, tri-ball tricks. Sorry, every day they do obedience.
Yeah.
Whatever. And then the rest of the time they could be doing agility, tri-ball, nose work, tracking, who knows. Some kind of trick.
Yeah, and I think when you're doing a lot of different sports, it's important not to do too much of everything, to focus on things for phases, and then move something like maybe like Lumi's tri-ball is in maintenance because she's been doing it for years. And
but if we start competing again, then we up it right before competition. Yeah.
But then he's been focusing more on competitive obedience with her because that's something she's not as far along in. So you have to balance all that out. You don't want to do it so much that the dog is getting annoyed of it, or it's becoming routine and not exciting anymore. Now, for some dogs, you could probably do it every day and it would
and also
not
because
diminish.
I'm not a big fan of setting hides in the same, like in our barn over and over and over again. If I'm going to do nose work, I want to take a trip. I want to go to Tractor Supply, which we can't do right now. Or I want to go to the park or conservation area, somewhere where it's brand new to the dog. That's good nose work practice for me. So I'm not going to do 3 lessons a week with my dog in the barn. I actually think that would be detrimental to their nose work.
But I think it depends on what you're working on, because I think that there are drills and things that are good to do in familiar areas and then expand out into less familiar areas. And there's a lot, like if you only have, and like right now with a lot of us being very stuck at home, you only have a few options, but you can find ways of utilizing those options that keep things
Let me put it
fresh
this
and
way.
interesting for the dog.
It's a lot easier to do it wrong than to do it right.
But that could be true going to new places too.
I think there's a lot more pluses going to new locations than
unless you say you were going just for the sake of argument.
Yeah.
Going to new locations 3 times a week, regularly setting hides that are too hard for your dog, and building giving up.
I don't think that doing that particular problem in a new location versus a familiar location, you end up with the same problem. So, okay, let me put it this way. We're going to take the same problem. We're going to do a new location. We're going to do an old location. So, training too hard of a problem. We do that in the same old location. We end up with a dog who doesn't like it, who's giving up, who's doing all this stuff. We do it in new locations. We end up with the same dog who's giving up and doesn't like it anymore. But we have a dog who's slightly more accustomed to new locations. So I still end up with on the positive.
Except that my argument is that they will give up less quickly in a familiar environment.
Not if I'm setting them by definition too hard.
Okay, but say it's this,
and also let's say it's the same difficulty. Then that puts me in a position where I've created a false sense of security of how well my dog is doing, and then I go somewhere new. And
sure, but that's why I'm saying, which is what I said a couple minutes ago, that you're building skills in familiar environments and then expanding them into new environments.
Yeah. I would still say, because I don't really set what quote unquote hard hides, I think my hides are challenging, not hard. And not the hides, it's usually the problem that's around the hide. Yeah, that's such a vague term. But if you're setting reasonable hides, right, then I think going to new locations, you get a lot of benefit back on your, your time and effort.
And it's very good diagnostic for what's going to happen in trial. If your dog is very comfortable in brand new locations, if they're not, that's something that you want to find out before you go to a brand new location where a title is on the line.
Absolutely.
But I do think that you can, like a lot of us, there are a ton of rooms in this house I've never searched with my dog.
Yeah.
And I could make a point of doing that. Just because this area is familiar to them doesn't mean I couldn't expand their ideas about odor here. Michael was just doing a class this morning, where a dog was in his own home and didn't think that this one area of the room was productive for searching. And so they, gave him that idea within the class that it was a place that could be productive for odor. And so I think, some people probably train a lot at home. I don't tend to train a lot in my house. And so being stuck at home now, I think probably all of us could find places in our house that would be good for our dog to search. I've been wanting to do a series with my dog of we have very, very, very small closets in our house of just searching every closet. So I think you can build skill that way. Next.
Yeah. I have a border collie who loves this sport and consistently blasts past threshold hides. I have her sit the start line a bit to see if she catches it, but she runs into the element area like a bull in the china shop. I don't want to eliminate her drive, and hoping I can get her to be more methodical. Thoughts on how to train? Take a look at our threshold training video on it's on Patreon and on our website. So
And
here,
the dog in it is a maniac, so
She
you'll
is.
see what the kind of thing that you're talking
you
about.
wouldn't believe it from watching the video because she picks up on the training so quickly. And part of the reason she picks up on the training so quickly is because we do not hold her back. We don't stop her. We don't sit her. We don't do obedience. I really believe that dogs are like a bow and arrow or a spring, where you crunch them like this by making them sit at the start line. You pull on them back. You're stretching and stretching and stretching, building all this kinetic energy or potential energy. And then the dog goes blah and blasts out in the search area. Whereas if you let them relax and just kind of drift into the search, they're more likely to not run through.
There are ways of holding them back that don't build that tension in the same way, in my experience, where you can,
I think all versions of holding a dog back build tension,
maybe,
even
but
if
not
it's less
in the
tension.
extreme.
Yeah. Agreed.
Like my usual. So there are some searches where I'll just walk in, let my dog just kind of drift into the search area, like you said, and there are others where I will take the loop of their collar and watch them scan
Sure.
before I release them.
That's what I'm trying to say. Is it's okay to have a dog who is built up a ton of energy, so long as you've put in where that energy should go. It should go straight into the threshold, and which is what the lesson does. And so definitely check that out. But one thing I do want to mention is this idea of I don't want to eliminate her drive. So first off, blasting through a door is not drive. Unless we're willing to say that every dog who runs out the front door is a highly driven sport/working dog, which most of them are not. They just have this expectation of blasting through a door. And a lot of those dogs have all this energy. And then when you try them into dog sport, the dog's like, oh my gosh, 5 minutes of nose work. I can't even do any more than that, So it's not like they have a whole bunch of drive. Arousal is not the same thing as drive. Not every dog who freaks out when he sees a squirrel has what it takes to be an actual squirrel hunting dog, right? So just because a dog gets excited or aroused does not mean your dog is driven. I'm not saying your dog is not driven either, but a lot of driven dogs. So, for example, when I think of drive, I don't necessarily think of a dog who runs blast through a search. What I think of is a pointer on point, frozen, not moving at all. A border collie stalking.
Intensity and focus is what I think about.
Yeah, so it's usually a very slow, intense. It's like having this clear idea in your mind of a goal that they want to accomplish. What goal is accomplished by running through a door? Right? There isn't. But when I see a dog who comes in and hits that threshold of the door, that's what I see as drive. It's like, wow, that dog has a lot of drive. Now, maybe the dog has an idea of an objective in the distance, that they get into that door and they see a chair over there that they want to hit. It's their number one objective.
Or they've caught an odor that's way, way into the space.
Yes.
But so often, and you can tell by watching the dog, which one it is. If they are, like, they've already caught odor and they're going straight to it and working it, or they're running in and then going, oh, what's in this room? And just sort of spinning around.
And the number one way to figure that out is to set more blank searches so that you can see, is the dog running through the door just because they have been trained to run in through the door, or are they running through the door because they caught something? If you set odor, you can't tell. But if there's no odor and they blast through into that room, that has nothing to do with drive. There was no objective being met there.
Yeah,
right?
I should do a little mini video on a series of searches I did with Hazel. I did a blank searches webinar for SWU, and so I was doing a bunch of video, and so I had done a blank search in the barn with Hazel, and she just runs into the room, just blasts in. And so I was like, okay, is that indicative that she would skip a threshold hide or not? And so I did 2 follow-up searches to that. In the first one, I had just one hide way back in the furthest back corner. And she she came in quickly. It wasn't quite a blast. And came in and then started searching the threshold because of all of this odor that was pouring in from that corner hide because I'd left the door open. And so she searched and searched the front and then went and pinpointed it in the back, which had I not left the door open, I think she would have just run in and then gone right to the back. And then I did another follow-up search where I had a threshold hide just right on the frame of the door. And she came in and whipped without even taking, like, I think 2 steps into the room, whipped back and hit it. So would I have preferred she got it without entering the room at all? Maybe that would have meant she was paying a little bit more attention, but she was paying enough attention that she could get it without doing anything else. When I ran my other dog on the same series of searches, she hit it without entering the room at all.
Yeah.
So yes, diagnostic and
Yep.
interesting.
So now, 2 gentle, non-confrontational ways of teaching the dog to hit thresholds, just briefly. The first method is to let the hide. If you've been watching, because I know you've been coming to our patterns and handling class. Remember, pattern is letting the hide teach the dog. So set the hide up near the threshold, bring the dog to the threshold, let the dog off leash, let him run in like a maniac. Wait for them to find the hide. Just wait, however long it takes. Dog finds the hide, great. Do it again. 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 After 2, 3, 4, 5 times, the dog's going to go, hey, maybe I should check this threshold before I rush into the room. Make sure that you're altering that location of the hide along the threshold. That's basically what the video you'll watch on our website. The second is to set a clear objective at the threshold that the dog will draw the dog's attention. We used to do this in our threshold classes. We used to always put a box along the wall, first wall. And we don't start with boxes anymore. We usually use the odor by itself. But setting a box or a chair at that threshold that the dog goes, hey, look, a chair. Chairs usually have odor. Or, hey, look, a box. That's a good place to check. Using that objective to attract the dog to the threshold can often get the dog started in a good way. Okay, next question.
Yeah, you want to read it?
Go ahead.
I'm wondering how to practice exterior since my usual places, playgrounds, are off limits. Ideas.
So one is, why do you need to practice exteriors? Why not just practice interiors? I really think it's a good thing for people to not think so much in terms of elements, that there's nothing special about exteriors or interiors other than they're just fun.
Right. I mean, I think the thing about playgrounds or pavilions at parks and things like that is that there are a bunch of fun objects, and it does interesting things with the wind, and there's a bunch of things to stick odor on. So I understand wanting to utilize those.
But when you can't, you can't. So but that doesn't mean if your only goal is to have fun, then find out how to have fun in the areas you have.
Right. I mean, you could, if you do want to work outside, you probably have a sidewalk in front of your house.
Yeah.
Maybe
or
a
front porch, a front door.
Yeah, front porch would be fun. A front yard.
A car in the driveway.
Half wall section that a lot of yards have. Backyard, whatever you have, just use. And you can find ways of making it interesting. One way, letting the dog watch you throw hides. Another way, running around pretending to set hides.
You're just going through all of our basic curriculum in these locations. Right. All the hunt drive, all the independence, all the problem solving.
Fences.
Go through all 4 of those foundational pillars and go outside to your front porch or side wall or any of these areas now that I told you, and find some way to do one of those lessons in that area, each one, and just go through them.
And fences, if you have fences, are excellent for setting problem solving, working against residual, working the wind. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything more to say about that question? If you have follow-up questions about that, let us know. But I think that's a pretty straightforward answer to that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then once you can go back to playgrounds, they'll be fresh and new and exciting again, which is always good too.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that maybe we're saying, just theoretically in terms of understanding your exterior, a great way to start training exteriors during this time is to watch more exterior videos, watch other people's searches, watch our videos online. And just teach yourself about how to read and handle and strategize about exteriors.
Yeah.
This is a great time to spend more time studying as a handler,
right,
and doing visualization exercises and things like that.
Yeah, because to go back to what we're talking about is how much is too much to train nose work. I think that you should train the dog enough to build skill and allow them to have fun. But you should train yourself much more than the dog needs training. This comes so naturally to them. Yes. We're just letting them know what the criteria is and making sure that they want to do it in whatever location we take them to. But for us, it's a different language. We're having to read the dog, we're having to read the search area, we're having to read the wind, and all of those take time to learn. And so that would be, yes, a great thing to spend time doing. Just taking the concept of learning to read the wind better, which even I think I'm decent at reading the wind, but it's still in the middle of a search and a trial. I have a very hard time figuring out what's going on a lot of the time. And so setting a hide, hypothesizing what the wind is going to do, and then watching your dog work it. And the odor doesn't always follow exactly what the wind is doing. But it can be interesting to find ways in which it doesn't. Like if you have both sun and shade, and the odor is getting drawn into the sun or something. You can just learn more about the limited exteriors that you do have, and how wind, sun, rain, whatever works in those areas.
Yeah. Patty mentions here that she's found there are many fun and challenging areas inside and outside of her own house since she's never searched there before. I think that's a great thing to mention. Is a lot of time we omit the areas we have right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
I still actually have never set hides inside of our little bathroom right here for catfish. I really should. And I bet you that will be a very challenging space, that he'll feel crowded. He'll feel funny about going in there.
Especially if you put something in the bathtub.
I know, that would be fun.
Yeah.
I still have a video of him as a puppy chasing his toy into the bathtub. I should, yeah. Anyways, maybe we'll do that tonight.
Yeah.
Anyways, next question.
Yeah.
If you had to choose either L3 Element Specialty or NW3 for a dog competing at the NW3 level for the first time, which would you recommend? It's an interesting question.
Very interesting.
In general, I think it would depend on the handler and dog, but as a general rule, I'd recommend they entered whichever was coming first, I guess. But let's say there's two coming up on the same day, and they have to pick. They're both an hour away. They have to pick an NW3 over here or an L3 over here. I'm, in general, going to send them to the NW3. Yeah. I think you get more information about your dog, what you need to train, what you need to work on.
Because you're getting an overview.
Yeah, my goal is not to send them to the one they'll pass. It's the one I want to send them to the one they're going to get the most information from about what they need to work on, how to grow as a team. That's not to say they can't learn a lot from the L3. They definitely can. But I would say that is a good place to go and practice the things you know to work on. If you already know what you need to work on, you're like, I have trouble with L3 exteriors, then do that.
Yeah.
But if you don't know, then do the NW3.
But even if you say you do have trouble with level 3 containers, and that is something you should address head on, but maybe you shouldn't go do a whole day of it until you fix the problem.
That's true.
Maybe you should go do it where you may have a couple of container searches, but they're not all container searches. And then, I mean, I think trials are amazingly good at telling us what we're missing, what we haven't been focusing on, holes our dog has, holes we have. And so, yeah, I love to utilize them that way. And I think that, like Michael said, you get more opportunity to do that in an NW3. I also love NW3s.
Yeah, they are fun. They're, in my opinion, they're a lot of fun.
And I like the variety of them as well. Especially now that they've changed the search parameters.
Yeah. Okay. That was the last question.
Have any follow-up anything from anyone?
I haven't seen anything. We're going to give you a couple seconds to ask any follow-up questions you may have. We want to thank you for tuning in and watching, and thank for all of our supporters on both our website and our Patreon, and people who've bought our new merch. If you haven't seen it, let me show you. We've ordered our own merch finally.
Yeah, a number of you have already bought merch, so thank you for both buying and wearing it.
Yeah, we had a bunch of people come to our class, and we're all wearing the same shirt. So let me pull up the thing so I can make sure I'm... Oh, that didn't do that. That's weird. So here's it. So it says, "'Tis better to have alerted and false than never to have alerted at all." It's our first Nosework themed design. We're really proud of it, and we have more on the way.
Oh, and there was a question that we missed from Charlotte that I know she sent, and I somehow misplaced the email.
Oh, okay, what was that?
Go ahead. And...
can you explain what the mushroom effect is in regard to odor and how one would set up a scent puzzle in order to train for it? Honestly, that's a new one for me. I'd never heard of the mushroom effect in Nosework. I guess normally what people mean by mushroom effect is how something expands really rapidly. Or yeah, I mean, is she talking about odor? You think she's talking about odor cones and odor plumes? I think it's about... I
mean, I've heard people use the term, but I didn't hear them completely define what they meant by it.
Yeah, so
often the case when people throw around terms like that.
Yeah.
It's not something I've worried about, but I'm sure there's someone on here who knows how people are usually defining that.
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, if you just set a variety of different odor problems and cook times and things like that, you'll prepare your dog for whatever might happen. That isn't something that I'm aware of that I've had to worry about.
There may be another term people use for that we would be familiar with.
Yeah, because maybe it's just a concept we call it slightly different where I've learned.
Like Brenda says skirting.
What does skirting mean?
I don't know. I think that might mean working the skirt of the odor cone.
Like the fringe or the what do we call it? The edge of the odor cone.
Yeah,
that's what we'd normally
but
say.
you like when you have a high hide and it falls, like this, people will call working the bottom working the skirt.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it does
but
kind of work
that
like a
doesn't
skirt.
look like a mushroom, so I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so if you can fill us in more information or wherever you heard that from, if you have access to them and you can ask them directly what the mushroom effect means, then we would be more than happy to try to give our advice on that.
Or a term that I used on Saturday, but I don't think I defined, which is mini skirt, where you've got the elevated hide and you've got a lot of odor coming
You're
way out here.
creating new terms so that
I
people
am.
can get confused?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And then, so you'll see the dog working the skirt out here. Then you'll also see like a little circle down here. So that's the mini skirt.
Oh my goodness. That's hysterical.
This says it was due to a bank of windows and the odor moved from the tables close to the windows over to the tables across the room. Okay, so I haven't heard of that as mushroom, but you definitely, when you have windows, they're going to play with odor a ton.
Yeah.
If there's sun pouring in, you're often going to get odor really pulling over to the windows because of the heat.
Mm-hmm.
So that may be what they were talking about. I don't know what it has to do with mushrooms, but who knows? So, and if the windows are really, really cold, you can have other ways that it plays with the odor. If there's humidity and there's moisture condensation on windows, it's going to do other things to the odor. If you have access to play around with big windows, it's always very interesting. In my Elite Challenges class on Saturday, one of the students had set a hide about 5 feet up on one end of the room that was a closet door, a mirrored closet door, and then she had glass doors on the other side, and with sun just pouring right in those glass doors. And her dog had to work along the windows, and even like communicated that she'd found it over there before finally catching it for real in the center of the room and just going straight to it, straight across the room. But the sun was just sucking it all up into and onto that window.
Yeah.
So that's something I enjoy playing with if I have access to it, and the sun's in the right place and whatever. But yeah, anything you can set for your dog to learn how to problem solve in environments that they haven't before is important.
Definitely. Anything more to add about that, or any other follow-up questions that you see?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. In that case, I think we'll call it a day. When's the next AMA?
It will be, should be the last Monday of April. I'm sure we don't have anything else happening.
Yeah.
Since all of our
events have been canceled.
Has been canceled. Which means it would be.
And the next video review blitz.
Yes, so the video review blitz will be the 13th.
13th of April.
And the NAMA will be the 27th.
The 27th.
And that will be in the newsletter, so you don't have to write that down.
Yeah, so let your friends know so that they can join on in. Send your questions and videos. The sooner
you send your questions, the higher up they will be on the list. If you wait to the day of, they will often be at the bottom, and depending on how many we get, we may not be able to get to all of them. Mm-hmm. So when you have them, send them. And then you don't have to remember what they were either. Video review blitz. Yeah,
the video review blitz. We do an event just like this one. It's live streamed, and the only difference is instead of answering questions, we review your videos. You send us a Nosework video, and we will ransack it. We'll point all the things out you did wrong, all the weird odor things, all the dog choices that they made. So, we have a lot of fun with it.
So it's basically in-depth search reviews. It's mostly trial videos, but we're willing to review other things as well.
You can find them on our website under the video analysis section. We've done 2 of them so far. You can also find them on Patreon, I believe. So if you're on either of those sites, you just scroll through until you find it, and you'll see you can watch the records we have.
Yeah, and we've had some people, because we put out requests in the last one for more videos, and particularly where 2 people were at the same trial, so that we can compare and contrast different dogs and handlers working in the same space. And we had 2 handlers that did an NW3 at the same trial. Send us in their videos. So that is going to be very fun and interesting to review.
And I might get some permission from some of my friends to use their more nationals videos. So I know Christy Cervantes gave me all of her videos from the first ever nationals.
Oh.
And that might be, she
That'd
was
be
the
cool.
winner of the first ever national. So.
Yeah, we also have an interview with her if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
On both sites. And last time our theme was containers. So if you have a
Yeah,
particular...
it wasn't an intentional theme.
No,
FYI.
it worked out.
It just
that
happened.
way. We don't tend to get to a lot of videos in these because we go so in depth. It just takes a lot of time. But I think we reviewed 3 container videos earlier this month. So yeah, if you have an interest in containers, and we talked about the handling aspects.
Yeah.
And
if you want to get videos to us, the best way is to send the email file to us on Google Drive or Dropbox. Email it to readysitgo@gmail.com. That email address is on our website.
And it's very, very easy to share from Google Drive. If you upload your video to your Google Drive, which is free up to like 15 gigs or something, then you can easily share that to our email, and then we can download it.
Yeah.
Sending us YouTube videos, we often can't do workarounds to get things downloaded properly.
Yeah.
Or things will degrade, and so it's if you can do the other 2 options, it's easier.
It is. So yeah, thank you guys so much. We will see you guys next time.
Yes, thanks.